The river looked calm from a distance, but once the first wagon rolled into the water, everything changed. The current pulled at the wheels. Horses struggled for footing. One wrong angle, one hidden drop in the riverbed, and the entire wagon could tip. For thousands of pioneer families moving west, rivers were not scenery. They were obstacles that could end the journey in minutes. Welcome to Frontier History Archive, where we explore frontier history and life at the edge of civilization. Wagon trains crossing the American frontier faced many dangers, whether illness, distance, but rivers were among the most unpredictable. There were no bridges in many territories, and waiting for water levels to drop was not always possible. Supplies were limited. Winter approached quickly. Every delay increased risk. So how did wagon trains actually cross rivers? The first step was observation. Before a single wheel touched water, scouts rode along the bank searching for the safest crossing point. They looked for shallow areas where the river widened, because wider sections often meant lower depth. But depth was only part of the problem. The riverbed itself mattered even more. Soft mud could trap wheels instantly. Hidden rocks could break axles. Uneven ground could tilt a wagon dangerously, shifting heavy cargo to one side. Sometimes men entered the river on foot first. They used long poles to measure depth and test the bottom. This wasn't just caution, it was survival planning. Once a crossing point was chosen, preparation began. Wagons were lightened. Heavy cargo might be removed temporarily and carried separately. In some cases, goods were sealed in waterproof coverings to protect them from damage if water rose higher than expected. Canvas covers over wagons were often tightened and reinforced. These covers, originally meant for sun and rain protection, could help deflect splashes during crossing. But horses and oxen faced the hardest task. Animals had to pull thousands of pounds through moving water. If they panicked, the wagon could turn sideways, and once sideways, the current became far more dangerous. So drivers moved slowly. Rushing increased risk. Calm control mattered more than speed. But not all rivers were shallow enough for simple crossing. In deeper areas, pioneers sometimes used a method called caulking. Wagons were temporarily sealed with tar or pitch around cracks and seams. Wheels were removed. The wagon bed was floated like a makeshift boat across the river. Imagine the tension. Families watching their belongings drift across water, hoping the current did not carry everything away. Meanwhile, animals were swum across separately. Ropes were used to guide them. Sometimes multiple people entered the water to steady movement. And even with preparation, accidents happened. Wagons tipped. Supplies were lost. Journeys were delayed for days while families recovered and repaired damage. Yet wagon trains adapted quickly. They learned from previous crossings. Word spread along trails about dangerous rivers. Experience became collective knowledge. Crossing a river was not just a physical challenge. It tested coordination, patience, and trust between families traveling together. Because one wagon failing mid-crossing could block others behind it, and stopping halfway through a river was not an option. Even when wagon trains found a shallow crossing point, conditions could change in hours. Mountain snowmelt could raise river levels overnight. A calm crossing one day might become impossible the next. Because of this, many wagon trains reached a river and faced a difficult decision: cross now or wait. Waiting had consequences. Supplies were limited. Livestock needed grazing. Delays meant falling behind schedule, especially as winter approached. Some rivers forced families to camp nearby for days or even weeks, watching water levels carefully. During flood season, crossings became far more dangerous. Water that reached only the wheels during dry months could rise high enough to float entire wagons unexpectedly, and once a wagon lifted slightly off the riverbed, control was lost. Drivers understood one rule clearly: never let the wagon turn sideways. If a wagon angled against the current, the water pushed against its broadside, increasing force dramatically. That sideways pressure could flip it within seconds, so teams crossed straight, always facing directly across, never downstream. But sometimes, even careful planning wasn't enough. There are diary accounts of wagons tipping mid-crossing. Families rushed into cold water to rescue supplies before they floated away. Flour, tools, blankets, essential items could vanish downstream in moments. Livestock also struggled. Oxen were stronger and more stable in water than horses, which is one reason many wagon trains preferred them. Oxen moved slower but remained calmer in current. Still, animals sometimes panicked. When one animal lost footing, others followed. Ropes were used not just to guide, but to stabilize movement. Teamwork extended beyond humans. Animals were part of the survival system. In deeper rivers, where floating was necessary, wagons became temporary boats. After sealing seams with tar or pitch, pioneers placed barrels beneath wagon beds to increase buoyancy. Ropes tied to trees or anchored stakes helped guide the floating wagon across, while people on both banks controlled movement. This method required coordination and strength. If the rope snapped mid-crossing, the wagon could drift far downstream. Recovery meant additional time and effort, sometimes forcing families to unload everything and start again. River crossings also shaped trail selection. Over time, commonly used routes developed near safer fords, natural shallow sections used repeatedly by multiple wagon trains. Word spread along trails about reliable crossing points. Experienced travelers shared information with newcomers. The frontier was harsh, but knowledge was communal. River crossings were rarely quick events. Even in ideal conditions, moving dozens of wagons across water could take an entire day. Patience was critical. And once on the other side, work was not finished. Wet wheels had to dry. Damaged parts needed repair. Animals required rest. Supplies soaked by splashing had to be salvaged or dried in sunlight. Yet despite these risks, wagon trains continued westward. Rivers were obstacles, but they were also gateways. Crossing meant progress. It meant being one step closer to land claims, new settlements, and the possibility of opportunity. Each successful crossing built confidence. Families who had never seen such wide rivers before learned quickly. Children who watched anxiously from wagon seats began to understand the rhythm of frontier travel. River by river, mile by mile, experience turned uncertainty into routine. And in time, bridges would be built. Ferries would operate. Railroads would follow. But during the height of westward migration, the river crossing remained one of the most tense and defining moments of the journey. Not because it happened once, but because it happened again and again across thousands of miles. For many pioneers, survival on the frontier was not about one dramatic event. It was about steady decision-making at every obstacle. And few obstacles demanded more care than the simple act of guiding a wagon through moving water. Thank you for watching Frontier History Archive, where we explore frontier history and life at the edge of civilization. Until next time, goodbye from Frontier History Archive.